his ability to be unpredictable actually serves him well in these kind of negotiations, because you have to go, well, would he invade Greenland? Would he?
Welcome to Grounded, a podcast for restoring the church to a biblical foundation. And my guest today is Dr. Joe Rigney. Welcome back, Joe. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, glad to be on here, Steve. Good to talk to you.
We're going to talk about your article. I found it in American Reformer, and title is "A Whole Civilization Will Die." Wonder where you got that phrase from. Subtitle maybe "The Ethics of Political Rhetoric." This article happened because our president, Donald Trump, posted a couple things on Truth Social, I believe it was. I'm going to read one of the two posts that are in question here. Here it is. He posted, "A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. However, now that we have complete and total regime change where different, smarter, and less radicalized minds prevail, maybe something revolutionarily wonderful can happen. Who knows? We will find out tonight, one of the most important moments in the long and complex history of the world. 47 years of extortion, corruption, and death will finally end. God bless the great people of Iran." So some people, including some Christians and some Christian leaders, kind of winced at that. Like, ooh, what were some of the responses? Give us a feel for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people, this one, as well as other things that the president has said over the years, they see it as both bluster, but also because he's the president, sort of beneath the office, and to the degree that he means it, that it would be it's an evil thing to threaten to destroy an entire civilization. And so there's a pretty strong reaction. Obviously, this was in the midst of him negotiating with Iran to try to get them to do what he wanted them to do in opening the Straits of Hormuz or whatever it was at the time. He's clearly negotiating on Truth Social, which is its own funny thing. But it's part of what he does, and many Christians see this as one more instance of the wickedness of Trump's rhetoric, and which is something I've thought about over the years. The article I wrote, I've almost written 3 or 4 times because there have been other instances where he's done things like this, threatened to do things that would be evil and unjust. And Christians have reacted and say, look, see. And I've wanted to kind of recontextualize the rhetorical piece of it. So that's why I wrote it.
Yeah. So why is your response not to wince and to say, see, it's just another example of his horrible political rhetoric and so on? Why do you not respond that way?
Because I think I see what he's doing. So, if you read his book, The Art of the Deal, part of his negotiating strategy is unpredictability and chaos. You want the person you're negotiating with to be uncertain as to what you might do. You might walk away. You might be more aggressive. And that uncertainty is what strengthens your negotiating position. So I think that's very clearly what he was trying to do, and that's what he's done in many cases. The most recent one before that, where I'd almost written this, was when he threatened to invade Greenland. Or refuse to take invading Greenland off the table. So people we want to buy Greenland. Well, they don't want to sell. And so are you saying you might invade Greenland? And he said, I'm not taking any options off the table. And everybody freaked out because he said this would be, this would be invading an ally, a NATO ally, which would be a horrible thing to do. And I think that there's just a failure to understand how rhetoric actually works and which kinds of rhetoric are lawful and permissible. So those are the kinds of instances that the president does regularly that people freak out about it. And for me, I'm like, I think I see what he's doing, and I think what he's doing in principle is lawful, even if any given instance you might say, I'm not sure that was the best way to do it. So you could object on strategic or wisdom grounds, but as a moral principle, there's room for this kind of thing.
Yeah. You referenced The Art of the Deal, which, by the way, I have not read. I was tempted to read it, and then I thought, well, A, I'm pretty sure he didn't write it. Somebody else wrote it. And B, I can just, get myself a Cliff Notes version, and I can pretty well guess what's in there, right? Just from seeing how he conducts himself. Have you read that book?
I've never read the whole book. I've read summaries, same thing. But it was, and I read it because there were times where I would be puzzled by what he was doing. And then someone would say, well, this is just straight out of chapter 5. And then you'd go, oh yeah. So it's things like, one of his principles is use publicity and get shocking headlines in order to reset negotiations. So he's thinking of this as obviously a real estate developer, but like make news, and it throws your opponent or your negotiator, who you're negotiating with, off. And so it's like, that's what that was. Post this. He knows it's going to drive the news cycle. He's a master at that. It gains leverage, and it increases his position and develops a sense of urgency. Like that was very clearly what was going on in that post. Was a whole civilization will die tonight. Like, I mean it. It's coming, and it was effective at the time. I mean, whether the larger war is a wise thing is a separate question. But in terms of moving the needle in that particular instance, I think it was successful. He didn't destroy a civilization that night.
Yeah. In a sense, I think he's still acting the role of a real estate developer, right? Greenland, that's real estate.
Yeah.
Iran, that's real estate. The Straits of Hormuz, that's real estate. So he's right in his alley there and doing his thing. So you give us a couple of examples, one from the Bible and one from Shakespeare, on why this kind of, should I say, extreme political rhetoric might be legitimate. You want to talk about those? What's your one from the Bible? Yeah.
So the one from the Bible is the most important for Christians, obviously. And basically, here's where I came from this. So someone might say, the question is it always evil to threaten to commit evil acts? Like, so you're stipulating the thing that you're threatening is evil. If you do it, it's bad. It would be wrong, and it would be a sin. Okay, so it would be a sin to do it. Is it a sin to threaten to do it, to credibly threaten to do it? That's the principle that I think a lot of the president's critics are operating on. If it's a sin to do the evil, it's a sin to threaten to do the evil, always, everywhere. Well, I think that runs into biblical challenges because of Solomon, as just one example. So everybody knows Solomon requested wisdom, and God said that was a great request. I'm going to give it to you so that you can govern this people. That was 1 Kings chapter 3. And then the very next story is when the two prostitutes bring the dead baby. They've both had children. One of them rolled over and smothered the baby in the night, and then swapped the babies in the morning. And now there's this dispute over whose baby is whose. And they bring them both, and they say, Solomon, you're the king, pass judgment. And so he's looking at the situation. How do I determine who the true mother is? And what he settles on is, I'll threaten the baby. Bring me a sword, and I'll cut the baby in half. Each of you can have half. Now, what's he doing? Well, he's trying to reveal the true mother, because he knows something about mothers. And one of the things he knows about mothers is if that's your baby, a true mother is going to rather have the baby live and go someplace else than be cut in half, which is what happens. The true mother reveals herself by saying, no, let the other woman have it. Whereas the bereaved mother, the one who lost her baby, she's so torn up by it all, she doesn't care. Cut the baby in half. All the babies can die. And so Solomon, it works. The true mother reveals, and this is given as an instance of Solomonic wisdom.
Yes, like a prime example.
Exactly, and it's now proverbial. Like when we talk about someone who's able to sort of cut the proverbial baby, what we mean is they're behaving in a Solomonic manner. Well, if you think about what Solomon did, is he credibly threatened to do something that was evil. Had someone brought him a sword and he followed through on his threat, it would have been an evil thing for the king of Israel to butcher an innocent child. That would have been evil. God would have hated it. But him threatening to do it, and threatening to do it credibly, was presented as, this was really shrewd. This was really wise. This was actually a good thing. And so at the very least, that one example, and I think there are others in the Bible, puts that principle, it's always wrong to threaten to do evil things. It says that principle can't be true. It's sometimes wrong to threaten to do evil things, but sometimes it's not, as Solomon demonstrates. And so the argument would be, in the case of the president, would it be evil for him to destroy an entire civilization, to just indiscriminately bomb civilians and children? Would that be an evil thing for him to do? I think so, yes. I think God would be displeased by that. Indiscriminate bombing is not in accordance with just war, and so forth. So it would be evil to do it, but to threaten it, and to threaten it credibly, to make the leaders of Iran go, well, what's he going to do? Oh, what's coming? In order to bring them to the negotiating table, I think at least is morally permissible, and therefore it's a question of, is it wise and effective? So that's the biblical example.
I think the sons of darkness are sometimes wiser than the sons of light, huh?
Yeah.
We have a case of that here. So I looked for some other biblical examples, and I found some things that might qualify, but maybe not so well. And I'd like to hear some others. Do you have any others off the top of your head?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, all of the cases of righteous deception. So, like when David pretends to be insane, he pretends to be insane in order to escape from Saul and get in with the Philistines. I think there's other cases. So the Hebrew midwives righteously deceive Pharaoh and preserve the lives of the children, but they're lying about what's going on there. Rahab deceives her people in order to preserve the spies. And I think in Genesis you have these. So there's a number of cases of righteous deception in the Bible that I think would be something like that. They're using words. I'm trying to think. There had been another one, I think from David's life as well.
How about Gideon's army?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So where you have examples where, basically in war, deception is lawful.
Yeah, making ourselves look like a huge army when we're really just 300 guys out here.
With 300 guys, camouflage is permissible. And I think some Christians struggle with that because they think similarly that all deception is sin. And that's not true. In the same way, this I think is an important biblical ethical principle, is all killing sin? No, there's righteous killing, like the death penalty for capital crimes. And then there's unrighteous killing, murder. You murder an innocent person. That's killing an innocent person is wrong, but putting to death a guilty person for capital crime is righteous. So you can have righteous violence and unrighteous violence. Same thing, you can have righteous deception and unrighteous deception. And you can have righteous threats of destroying civilization. And I think you could have an unrighteous threat. I think there would be ways to do it. I'd have to think about what circumstances would so I think there's more questions to be answered, but the purpose of my essay was simply to say, this isn't so simple as to say, because the president threatened it, it's by definition evil.
Yeah, I'm with you. What's the Shakespearean example? I love it. I want our people to hear about it.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah. So this is actually where the whole thing started years ago because I taught Shakespeare for many years in college for college students. And I would teach Henry V, which is the famous, if people aren't familiar with Shakespeare, it's the once more unto the breach, dear friends, or we few, we happy few, we band of brothers. It's that play.
Let me interrupt you for just a second. So if y'all haven't seen it, you got to see Kenneth Branagh as Henry VIII. It's a 1989 film. I own it. I've watched it and watched it and watched it. So that's it. Uh-huh.
Yeah, good. Exactly. So, and so in this play, there's a scene where Henry has invaded France to reclaim some of what he claims are rightful lands. There's debates about whether he had the just claim, but that's what he's there for, is to reclaim lands that belong to his kingdom. And they've besieged a town called Harfleur and surrounded it. The citizens of the town have sent to the French army for help. Will you come rescue us from this English army? And there's a scene where the king comes and he says, well, what are you going to do, mayor? Are you going to surrender or not? And then he says, and just remember, if you don't surrender, if you make me come over this wall with all of my troops, it's a very... it's kind of like the mob. It's like, nice story you got there. It'd be a shame if anything happened to it.
He gets really graphic.
Town. Yeah. Nice town you got there. It'd be a shame if anything happened to it. And he said, right now, my soldiers are under my command. They're being very obedient, standing here behind me. But if you make them come over the wall, bloodlust might take over. And then he paints a very, very vivid picture of what's likely to happen if this comes to blows, which would include things like they're going to dash the heads of your infants. They're going to put your infants on pikes. They're going to like spits. They're going to rape your daughters. They're going to dash the heads of your old men against the rocks. They're going to kill every man in the city, and just paints a very, very vivid picture of the violence of war that's likely to happen. And he's basically saying, I'm not saying I'm going to tell them to do it, but once the battle starts, they're no longer on a leash. Right now they're on a leash, but if I have to take the leash off to come over the wall, you better watch out. And it's a very vivid picture. And the thing is, all of the things that he says might happen, his soldiers raping virgins, murdering infants, killing old men would be evil things. They would be, by Christian standards, they would be evil actions to do. But in the play, Shakespeare presents King Henry as a mirror of every Christian king. Like he's a model Christian king. And so you look at point. Yes, and he actually what's interesting is he said, we'll kill your infants, and then your women will wail like the women wailed when Herod slaughtered the innocents. So he's king. He goes by King Harry, and it's like, is it King Harry or is it King Herod? Who's about to take this town? And so as a result, the mayor of the town considers that threat and he surrenders. And so King Henry ends up conquering a city with his words. Nobody dies. None of the British, and that in particular encounter, none of the British die, and the people of the town are left free. They're now under the control of the English king, but they're alive.
Nice.
And so the thing is, it worked. And so I looked at that. So I remember teaching and having my students debate: is this righteous? Is this what a Christian king would do? Would a Christian king threaten to do violence to innocents in order to win a battle? Is that lawful? Is that righteous? And my students would debate it. And then at that point, I'd say, well, what about Solomon? And I would use the Solomon example as the kind of comparison for Henry. And so I've just had those two examples, one from literature and one from the Bible, sitting in my head all these years about tools of rhetoric. And then President Trump has given ample opportunity to apply. Is this on the table for how leaders can conduct themselves? Yeah.
This is an aside. Man, do we have a colorful president or what?
Yeah, he's it's never a dull moment.
Yeah.
I do think here's the challenge. I think in order for this kind of rhetoric to be useful, it needs to be credible. Like they have to actually, if they know if it's an idle threat,
just bluffing.
And they know it's a bluff, then don't even bother. It's not even useful. If anything, it's actually probably harmful to your negotiating position. And so one of the challenges that I can see is, how do you cultivate the credibility that you might do something evil, but actually not do the evil thing? And Solomon's actually an interesting example, because I think part of the way that story works is it's in 1 Kings 3, is when he asks for wisdom and he does the baby, threatens to cut the baby. But the previous chapter was 1 Kings 2, in which Solomon established his kingdom. And the way he does that is by executing his older brother Adonijah, who had tried to usurp the throne. He executes Joab, David said, hey, Joab did a bunch of bad stuff. I never got around to dealing with it. You really need to take care of this. And Solomon does. And then Shimei, one of the servants of Saul, who had cursed David and had been a thorn in his side, he basically quarantines him. And when Shimei breaks out, Solomon executes him. So in the previous chapter, you have examples of basically Solomon doing what I think is righteous violence in that context. I don't think Solomon is unrighteous, but what it did is it established him as a guy who's willing to go there. Right. So when the prostitutes bring the babies and he says, bring me a sword, I'm going to cut the baby in half. They are thinking, he might.
Oh, this man swings swords.
He was willing to kill his brother because his brother rebelled. He was willing to kill the descendants of Saul. He was willing to kill his dad's army commander. Like, this guy doesn't mess around. And so it was believable because Solomon had done righteous violence, wielded it well, that established the credibility. And I think this is, again, where I think the president's, what's often perceived as his recklessness, at times, I think there's boundaries. At some point, it's all wisdom stuff at that point. His ability to be unpredictable actually serves him well in these kind of negotiations, because you have to go, well, would he invade Greenland? Would he? And that makes it credible, which then the risk assessment on the other side is, well, maybe we should just come to the negotiating table and try to work this out. And that's the goal. That's the art of the deal.
Yeah. So what do you want to say to believers who just listen to everything you said and say, I still don't feel like it's right. I don't know. He shouldn't be talking that way. What do you want to say to them? Can I go first? Here's what I want to say to them. If it's a guy, I want to say, Brother, there's this thing called TRT. It's testosterone replacement therapy. Get some. You can go see your doctor. Knock off with the toxic empathy thing going on here, and knock off maybe too with they just have Trump derangement syndrome and anything he does that's even. I mean, if he walked on water, they'd say, "Can't swim, huh?" So he can't do anything right. What do you want to say to them, though, realistically?
Yeah, part of what I want to say is, so we want to be biblical Christians, which means we want the scriptures to define what good and evil is. And sometimes we can be wrongly simplistic about it. I think the deception example is actually where I would start with people going, lying's always wrong. And I say, well, if lying is unrighteous deception, then that's true. But the question is there a form of righteous deception? And I would try to show examples from the scriptures where the Bible not only records, but commends and approves the use of righteous deception in certain circumstances. I want to push people back into the Bible to say, hey, there's things that it's trying to teach us about how to conduct ourselves in this world, in this fallen and broken world, that we need to learn from. Because there are times where, was it righteous to hide Jews from the Nazis, to lie to them? There's no Jews here when you've got them under the basement. Was that righteous? And I want to say, absolutely, it's righteous.
Yeah, I would have done
it. That's a righteous thing, and you should do it with a clean conscience. You don't need to be worried that God's angry with you because you deceived an evil person, a madman, or a wicked SS agent who is trying to do violence to someone. And so it's those kinds of things that the Bible, I think, wants to instruct us in. It wants to shape our imaginations. And then the trick is so the first thing I want is get your categories clear. There is such a thing as righteous deception and unrighteous deception. There's such a thing as righteous violence, unrighteous violence. There's righteous threats to do evil things. There is such a thing. Solomon did one. I can give you at least one. I think there's others, but there's at least one. And so then the question, once you have the categories, is now I need to think about, well, which is this, right? Now I need to apply the Bible to our circumstances so that I know what to think. And I could respect someone who said, yeah, I agree with you that in principle it's possible, but I think that in this case it was bad, and they started to give reasons. Or they started to give reasons why they thought it was unwise. I don't think it's going to work. Then great, that's the kind of debates we ought to be having. But as you said, there is a sort of person who whatever the president does is wrong. Whatever he does, because they've so tribalized themselves that he can do no right. And it's that kind of thing that I think we have to uproot by considering more carefully the kind of scriptures that God's given us.
Yeah, amen. I like your response way better than mine, by the way. So the article's been out a little while. I forget when it came out. I don't know if I noticed the date. Has it been out a month yet?
Yeah, about a month.
About a month. So what's been the response? You getting any serious pushback from like notable Christian leaders anywhere?
Yeah, there was initially there was a few people who pushed back, and I had some offline discussion with friends who essentially tried to make the point that Solomon's case was not a relevant one because it was he was an anointed king of Israel and had sort of a special dispensation. It was kind of like sacrifice of Isaac. We don't look at that as a model. We don't say, go sacrifice your kid. So there's sort of extermination of the Canaanites. So there's certain people who said this was a special Solomon thing that you can't imitate, which my response was simply, I think the passage is putting Solomon forward as a model of wisdom.
Yeah.
Right. It's not simply saying he's special. Nobody can be like him.
This won't apply
it's
to
saying,
you.
Yeah, this is actually a model of biblical wisdom, and especially biblical wisdom in governing. I think that's the other thing is Solomon's wisdom was not just, he's a sharp cookie, but was actually wisdom to govern a people. It was wisdom to rule. That's the kind of thing that God provided for him, and then showed, this is what that wisdom looks like. I think this is what we have to cultivate is knowledge of the way the world works. That's what Solomon did. Is he knew how mothers work. He thought deeply about how mothers work, how grief works. I know how grief works. I know how threats of violence work. So there were all sorts of things about reality that he then brought together in order to speak wisely, to reveal truth, and therefore he could act wisely because he really was in touch with reality. And I think, to bring it back to the president, I think there's times where, for all of his flaws, which I think he has some, And I don't think he's a Christian prince. I don't think that when he talks about, wanting to go to heaven when he dies and thinks it's all about pedaling faster and building up a list of accomplishments to impress God or something like that, he very clearly doesn't understand the basic gospel message that Christ forgives sinners. Having said that, there are times where he's basically run circles around all of the smart set because he actually knows how people work. Yeah. His experience, like you said, his experience in real estate equipped him well to know how do people respond to incentives and threats. How do you actually leverage people? How do you move men? He's very shrewd. He's unusually shrewd in these areas. It's how he got elected twice when nobody thought he could. Like they thought there's no way he's going to do it. And then I didn't think he was going to do it back in 2015. I thought there's no way we're going to elect this guy. He won't win the primary. Oh, okay. There's no way he's going to beat Hillary. Oh man. And then there's no way he's going to come back after losing, scare quotes, in 2020. There's no way he's going to be able to make a comeback. And then sure enough, not only does he come back, but he comes back stronger, wiser, and having learned from his first experience. So
built a way better team, got a lot of brilliant people right beside him.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So the wisdom of surrounding himself with guys like Marco Rubio, who was you think back 10 years ago and what he was saying, little Marco, and the animosity and his ability to say, no, I'm going to bring this guy in, and he's going to become one of my most trusted lieutenants, or what Secretary Hegseth, or J.D. Vance, or Russ Vogt, or he's just surrounded himself with far better people this time than last time. Not universally, but much better. It's progress. And it's because I think he does have a good understanding of the way the world works.
Yeah. So we've really covered the topic as I wanted to cover it, but I'm going to offer you an opportunity if you want it. You want to earn some bonus points?
Oh, sure. What's up?
You already scored 100 here, but there's opportunity for bonus points. Okay. That Easter picture that Trump put out of him as well, he claimed it was like he's a doctor, he heals people. But it kind of had messianic overtones, right? It looked like Christ and so on. What's your take on that one?
Yeah, I think that was a whiff on his part. I have a hard time believing that he didn't realize that he thought it was, I was just supporting the Red Cross. I think that's political spin, which is another way to say lying. And I don't think that's a righteous lie. So I think it was a whiff. I think it was an unnecessary expenditure of political capital. I think that at the present moment, with all the things we got going on from the war with Iran, which I do think is damaging his political capital. He's spending political capital there, and it remains to be seen.
And the midterms are coming.
And the midterms are coming. Will this be a wise expenditure? If he can wrap it up and get back, I want him focused on domestic stuff. I want him deporting all the illegals. I want him closing all the loopholes, exposing all the fraud. I want Antifa, sued into oblivion or in jail. So I want I want economic delivery for American citizens, so that we can preserve the political power, so that we can continue to do good things after the midterms and into the next election. So in that sense, I think it's a big whiff, but it's also sort of the price you pay for having the kind of guy he is, who kind of operates off the cuff, I think, frequently, like trusts his instincts on things. And therefore it's often effective. It works. But when it doesn't, it can be needlessly harmful. So that was my take. I was not a fan. I think it was a blasphemous kind of image, even if it was meant in a joking kind of way. And the explanation, I think, was lacking. Yep.
You earned all your bonus points.
Okay, good.
Very good. Dr. Joe Rigney, the article, again, is A Whole Civilization Will Die, subtitled The Ethics of Political Rhetoric. I found it in American Reformer. You might find it other places, too. I would encourage you all to go read that article, and thank you, Dr. Rigney, for being with me here on Grounded today.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it.